Okay. All right. So first of all, hello everyone, and welcome to our first year experience Trojan Scholars Society professor panel. We have three fantastic professors here with us this evening who we really appreciate their attendance, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves in just a minute. But before we get started, again, we'd like to extend our sincere thanks to each of you for sharing your time and your expertise with us this evening. We know it's going to be very valuable for our first year members and all of our members. So thank you very much. And before we begin, I'll just explain sort of how this is going to go. So for the first 45 minutes or so, I have a series of questions that I'll ask you that I've shared with you ahead of this meeting. But then for the next 15 minutes, we'll do an audience Q&A. Audience, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask during that first portion, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, you can send them into chat, and I'll make sure to ask them toward the end. And then we'll wrap up around 6 p.m. So thank you everyone for joining as well. All right, so just to get started, we're gonna ask our professors to please introduce yourselves. So that'll be a little bit about your background, please, how long you've been teaching at USC, which courses you teach, and then any other involvements that you have in other extracurriculars or leadership positions here at the university, if you wouldn't mind. And I do have one more question, so keeping all that in mind, that I didn't ask you to prepare for, but don't worry, it's not gonna be as tough as maybe some of our finals coming up. What have you been reading lately? Is there anything that you'd like to share with our scholars that has been of particular interest recently? So Professor Tolan, if you wouldn't mind, I'll start with you. You're first here on my Zoom screen, and then we can go ahead and get started.
Great. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you to Connor and to the Trojan Scholars Society for inviting me to come and have a conversation and a dialogue with you today. I am an assistant professor of clinical. That means I'm a teaching professor in the Marshall School of Business in the Department of Management and Organization. So I teach courses in, organizational behavior and leadership. So that's people management, team management, organizational management. Whenever I say organizational behavior on an airplane, people go, oh, I need to be so organized. It's not that kind of organizational behavior. I need to be more organized too. And I teach a couple of other classes as well. I teach an elective in business ethics that really focuses more on social justice and contemporary issues in ethical challenges in business. And I teach an MBA class in teams and team management, so leading effective teams. I know Connor because I also lead the Corey Applied Leadership Program, which is a first-year strengths-based leadership program for first-year students at Marshall. And if you're not a student at Marshall, I'm still happy to talk to you about leadership development. That is where my passion and my scholarship converge. And I have also been a faculty advisor for several different clubs, LBSA, Latin business students, still with the Marshall Women's Leadership Board, and I've served with Own It before. I've been at USC way too long, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. I guess I've been here nearly a little over 20 years. I started out in executive education, so as a consultant, helping organizations build their management teams and deal with mergers and acquisitions. And what does that mean on the organizational development learning side? And then I made the transition over to faculty. So I am also have my MBA from Marshall back in the day, and just recently in the past couple of years got my doctorate of education at Rossier in org change and leadership. So I will tell you one other thing is I'm just as happy as you that classes are over. Maybe not as happy, and I only have to give one final this term. So, but I do have to read a lot of papers.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Oh,
and so
and
that's
what
the
am I
reading
reading?
you'll be doing, yeah.
You know what? I have to look because I just picked it up. And I am reading Who Do We Choose to Be? Facing Reality, Claiming Leadership, Restoring Sanity by Margaret Wheatley. And because it's I'm at a stage now too where I'm deciding what direction leadership is going to take me personally, but I also want to read up and see how I can continue students' leadership journey. So that's the book on my nightstand right now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Professor Erol, if you wouldn't mind going next.
Thank you, Connor. I am Onur. I'm a postdoc teaching fellow at the Department of Middle East Studies. I'm a political scientist by training. I got my PhD from the University of Chicago. And since then, I've been teaching at the Department of Middle East Studies here at USC. Our department is an interdisciplinary department, so I am the political scientist of the department, but there are others. There are historians and sociologists, and we're still growing. So there's a literature person that just joined the department. So this is the work environment that I exist in. I've been teaching courses like Power and Authority in the Middle East, Cities of the Middle East, Environment and Politics in the Middle East, which got an award last year. I have to share these good news. And this year I'm teaching my department's intro class that Connor is taking with me, Global and Environmental Perspectives on the Middle East. And what am I reading, you asked, right, Connor? I am reading, I just downloaded a bunch of Moroccan novels, fiction. I'm going to Morocco on vacation, so I'd like to just read a few fiction books. I just started a book called For Bread Alone, but not recommended yet. We'll see. The jury's out.
Okay, sounds good. Please, keep us updated if it is a recommendation. Thank you very much. And then lastly, but definitely not least, Professor Tokorcheck, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. I'm Paul Tokorcheck, and I'm in the math department. I am also teaching faculty. We don't use the word clinical faculty. I think that, I don't know if that's specific to Marshall, but we're in Dornsife. We use a slightly different thing. But yeah, I'm an associate professor teaching. I'm also the director of undergraduate studies, which means that I'm overseeing all of our majors. We have 4 programs in math, about 550, 575 majors across the 4 programs. Oh, sorry, there's things happening in chat. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I guess as far as reading goes, this is a little bit weird, but with all of the talk about AI and ChatGPT that's been going around, in my current role, I realize that this is something that we have to get ahead of, and so I've been reading a lot about that. And I just glanced over at my bedside table, and somehow in all of this process about reading about AI, I pulled off The Neuromancer by William Gibson off of my shelf, and I've been just kind of flipping through that as I've been reading. It's been fun.
Excellent, thank you so much. And we may, if we have time, return to the subject of ChatGPT and AI as it relates to being a professor a little bit later on. But everyone, as you can see, we have 3 very kind of diverse backgrounds here, but all very distinguished, very involved here in the university. So I think we have a lot to learn from these fantastic professors, and we'll get into that with our questions coming up here. But before we really dive in all the way, I'd like to go outside the box just a little bit with our professors and ask each of you to think back to your time in this kind of very transitional period as a young adult. And what advice, and you can share, I know this is a personal question, so you can share as much or as little as you'd like, but what advice would you give to someone in a position like yours during that period? And I know the order is going to be a little tricky because most of these questions are for all of the professors. We can stick to the same order for a little while. We can switch it up a little bit later, or however you'd like to do that is more than fine with me. But I don't know. Maybe we can go backwards because we started. So Professor Tokorcheck, if you wouldn't mind starting this time.
Sure. I guess the question is, what advice would I give to someone starting college as the students are here?
Yes.
Yeah, I was asked this question actually recently in a different panel, and the advice that I gave was, it sounds ridiculous, to take classes that you're interested in. And I know that sounds obvious, but I think that too many students don't do that. I think that a lot of students, they see that degree as their goal, And the goal is to get to it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And that means often trying to search out the easiest courses that will get them that 1 GE credit that they need or something like that. And I hate to say that that's doing it wrong, but it's kind of doing it wrong. And you're going to end up in a bunch of large lecture halls with a lot of students learning something that you're not interested in. And if you continue down that path, you'll get to the end. And at the end, you'll look back at your college years and maybe feel like it was a waste of your time. And you might be right. But you made those choices, and there's so many fun and interesting classes to take at USC. And I recommend just really getting into the catalog and exploring and highlighting classes that really sound interesting to you and that make your heart sing a little bit, and do them, because this chance won't happen again. You know, if you always wanted to learn Italian, like, do it. Now's the time, you know. Or maybe you're an Italian major and you're just really interested in chemistry and you've watched some videos on YouTube and you're like, I just want to go sit in a lab and wear a lab coat and play around with Bunsen burners for a semester. You can do that, and you should, because you won't have this opportunity again.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and I think it's fantastic advice. It's actually why I'm taking Professor Onursal course this semester. So
Yeah,
it's very much something that has positively impacted my college experience as well. And so if you wouldn't mind going next as well, Professor Erol.
And he's been doing very, very well. So clearly this is a winning strategy. Absolutely. Now, one other piece of advice I could add, looking back to my kind of transitional period when I was young and had a full head of hair, I think perhaps if I developed a certain sense of joyful humility with regards to learning something, failing and failing well, wanting to fail and learn from those failures, I would have done better and I would have matured better. There's just a world of very joyful growth that comes after learning. Oh, I might have been the best student in my little high school in my little town, but this is another league, and that's absolutely okay. That's where you want to be. Because what is the alternative? If you are the best at everything, then there is nothing left to learn. So in that humility, in that making peace with that humility, there's just a very promising sort of aftermath that comes. I would advise that.
Excellent, thank you. And we will circle back very shortly to that kind of transition from being that type of maybe star student in high school to a very rigorous academic environment in university. But first, Dr. Tolan, for that last question, any advice that you might give to someone in your situation at this time?
No, and I agree that it's funny because when you say, you know, the thing is, and you previewed us with the achiever thing, but we come to USC, we all come to USC with totally different experiences. But one thing I would have told, advice I would give to students who are coming to USC, I went to a liberal arts college that did not have requirements. I went to Smith College in Massachusetts. So it was all women, which was an adjustment for me. But it was the best school I got into, and it happens to be a very, competitive liberal arts college. And one of the things that I felt there was like an imposter. And I wanted to tell students that we all feel that, especially when we're going into college, and that everybody else is feeling the exact same thing. And don't think that you're the only one, that folks are more like you than different, and to celebrate those differences and seek out, like you mentioned, Paul, was to go out and find the things you're passionate about, is go out and find the things you're curious about, which also means sitting and having coffee with folks at the dining hall, or, don't be afraid to ask, do you have class now? You want to get a coffee? Or, do you want to work those problems? People are anxious for that connection. I wrote down a couple other things. I don't think I want to say treat school like a job, because I think you already do that here at SC. But to lean into your strengths and explore those different places to use them and develop them. But this other very practical piece of advice I had was to buy the books. Don't think you can get by without buying the books. Whether you share them with with a peer, split the price, but don't talk about learning from your failures. I kind of learned from my failures in college that way, and I would not advise that.
Absolutely, thank you. And if I might share a small piece of advice as well that I was given before my first year, and I'm really glad I heard it, and it's going to sound really deceptively simple. It was go to class, do the homework, because just doing those two things, you will get ahead. And I know it's really hard, especially when it's a lot of reading, or a lot of problems, large problem set, but that has helped me out a lot as well. So I did preview our next question a little bit, but with TSS, Trojan Scholars Society, a large portion of our base here are merit scholars. So those are those students who were really high achievers in high school. So this is going to be a little bit of a two-part question, but first of all, those students are most likely looking to continue their academic success in the classroom in college. So what advice do you have? How can a student stand out and really excel in your courses? What specific things make a student stand out? And you know what, we can start. Let's start from the middle.
I'm the middle. Yes, in this context, right? Right, yes. Of course. So when we're talking about really high achieving students, I mean, it just comes with the territory that they're generally doing well, I assume. So it's not your run-of-the-mill advice that we're looking for here. I'll say that certain students that really stuck out to me in my own experience in teaching were the ones who were particularly curious, who wanted to learn extra reading, who wanted to explore certain conceptual branches of things that they weren't responsible for in the scope of the class, but they were just curious. They were just intellectually curious. And college is a place, unlike high school, it's not as structured what your education will be. The more you give to your professors, the more your professors will just give back to you. It's almost like a stand-up comedy show. The more energy you put into your comedian will just reflect that back. So those are the things, going the extra mile, going to the office hours. If you're particularly interested in a specific subtopic that the class covered, ask for further reading, for instance. That kind of stuff always goes far.
Absolutely, thank you. And then Professor Tokorcheck as well, if you wouldn't mind addressing the same question.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, this is you had mentioned coming to class and doing the homework, and I agree, it's deceptively simple, but I really feel that this particular semester, and I'm gonna call out some of my own students right now, but also I realize that, as the director of undergraduate studies, I hear this from all of the other math professors too, that in our classes, in particular this last year and even this semester somehow, there's this really sharp divide between the students that are coming to class and the ones that aren't. And I really see it. My grade book, we're going into finals right now, and my grade book is it's completely separated. And I see the other professors here nodding. In math, we call this bimodal distribution. I have a nice little bell curve, but there's just two of them, right? And I see all the names, and the names that are on the top bell curve, they're the ones that come to class every day, and they ask questions and they do the homework. And then I have this other bell curve that's over on the side. And so, yeah, it really stands out to me, that particular mode. Yeah.
Thank you, and I appreciate that kind of confirmation of that strategy as well.
Yeah,
Professor Tolan, yeah, we'll finish with you.
For sure. I gave some thought to this because I have sort of the academic achievement part, but also your personal well-being part of things. So in the academic part is some basic stuff, which I answered later on when you said the single thing, is read the syllabus, check on Blackboard every week, not just at the beginning of class. So, or the course website, wherever stuff is kept, stay on top of that. But oftentimes it's not until the midterm, or if you have more than one midterm, the first assignment, that students kind of recognize, oh, the standard's a little different here. So come and talk to us early on, like when you're doing that first assignment. Now, I teach a class where I don't have a TA that supports, and I don't know, I think when you've got like core math, I think there are TAs, but go and use them. Like for me, just come and see me and say, I'm working on this. Would you take a look at it? Am I on the right track? Ask